Daniel Ricciardo has been an excellent driver during his Formula 1 career. His 8 Formula 1 Grand Prix wins puts him ahead of some pretty impressive names from Formula 1 history, such as Juan Pablo Montya, Riccardo Patrese, and the winner of the first ever Formula 1 World Championship, Emilio Giuseppe Farina. So when we talk about Daniel Ricciardo retiring because no one wants him, instead of it being his decision, that seems crazy. But with McLaren Racing planning on replacing him next year with Oscar Piastri, which team is going to step up and show they can make the most of his skills? And what does Daniel have to say about where he should be next year? If you're still unsure about what is going on with the Piastri, Ricciardo, McLaren and Alpine situation, then let me clear it up for you. Assuming the Contract Recognition Board doesn't say it cocked up and approved Piastri's contract with McLaren accidentally, then Piastri will be racing alongside Lando Norris next season. McLaren will either buy Daniel out of his contract, costing them somewhere in the region of $21 million, or just pay him his salary and let him sit on the sidelines with his now official girlfriend Heidi Berger, daughter of Gerhard Berger. Maybe he can ask her dad for some tips on how to get back to the top of the game. This leaves Daniel in the uncomfortable situation of needing to find a place to drive in the future. Kimi Raikkonen's recent retirement to NASCAR does show that there are options out of the sport, but Daniel doesn't sound like he's ready to take a step back from the big league just yet. I was saying it when I was 27. I'm getting older. In a way, yes, I'm getting older, but I think also I know a bit more about the sport now, and I know that things do take time, Ricciardo said. We all believe we can win, so it's like, well, I want to win tomorrow, but it's not always like that. Even now, talking about 2024 or 25, in a way, it's hard to think that far ahead, but it will come around quickly. We might get to see more behind the scenes of Formula 1 now than we ever have in the past, thanks to teams' YouTube channels and shows like Netflix Drive to Survive. But we still can only begin to imagine how difficult being an F1 driver must be. As many drivers have said, a lot of the struggle comes from the mental game. In an F1 race, everything is moving so fast that if you don't have complete faith in yourself and your ability to race, then you're going to fail. That is just how it is. Daniel clearly still has that belief in himself and is taking inspiration from another driver that was in a similar position recently. You also take little things from if it's a Perez when his career looked over and now he's potentially fighting for a world championship. The sport can change so quickly. Perez was days away from racing his last ever Formula 1 race when Red Bull decided to take him on as a partner for Max Verstappen. Even this season, Vettel retired completely out of the blue. Alonso announced he was moving into Vettel's old seat at Aston Martin. Then the whole Piastri thing kicked off before many news outlets could even write the eulogy for Seb's career. And looking at the grid, there are plenty of places he could end up, with the currently vacant seat at Alpine looking like a particularly exciting space from his point of view. Of course, not everyone sees Ricciardo as the race winner he is. It is a famous phrase in motorsport that you're only as good as your last race, and that is maybe more true in Daniel's case than any other driver on the grid right now. Except for maybe Mick Schumacher, but we'll come back to him in a minute. First, let's see what his uncle Ralf Schumacher thinks of Daniel's credentials for another season in Formula 1. There's the question of Daniel Ricciardo, but personally I can't see him getting another chance in Formula 1. Ralf may be one of the many F1 drivers to have won less races than Ricciardo, but he seems to have seen enough to decide that Daniel isn't worth the money for teams anymore. Or maybe he's just doing what he can to help out his nephew. Mick Schumacher's name has been linked with the vacant Alpine seat a lot recently, especially since Gunther Steiner said that Haas weren't currently discussing a contract for 2023 with him. Schumacher went 31 races before scoring his first points at his 32nd Grand Prix weekend at Silverstone earlier this season. Until that point, people were very seriously questioning whether or not he deserved a place in the sport, especially when you considered how much money his crashes had cost Haas so far in the season. Now though, he seems to be the media's favourite to take the vacant Alpine seat. It just shows you how much difference a few good races can make in Formula 1, and Daniel Ricciardo can take faith from that as well. McLaren team principal Andreas Seidel recently opened up about what he thinks has gone wrong for Ricciardo during his time at McLaren. Speaking at the Hungarian Grand Prix, before Fernando Alonso's move to Aston Martin sparked the driver transfer market into life, team principal Seidel said, "It is clear that if you look at how the season has gone so far with Daniel, he's disappointed, and we're disappointed as well. But in the end, frustration or disappointment doesn't help you moving forward. The most important thing is to keep going with a clear ambition to make it work. That's why we put in a lot of energy within the team in order to see what we can do on the car side. For example, to help him feel more comfortable with the car, especially when it comes to qualifying, when he has to push the car to the absolute limit. At the time this quote was given, Andreas probably knew that the team would have the option of bringing in Piastri for 2023, if everything fell into place just right. It's interesting to hear him talk about the team putting in the work to try and make the car comfortable for Daniel. That is something we hear a lot when people talk about the McLaren F1 cars. Somehow, they manage to consistently make cars that are uncomfortable for their drivers, and that definitely hasn't helped Daniel adapt this year. Ricciardo's struggles with the current McLaren car have been well documented, but Norris has also found it tricky to get to grips with the MCL36 at times, forcing him to adjust his driving style. "I don't think you can probably in any way say the car is made around me," Norris said in an interview ahead of the summer break. "From what I want from the car, it's like the opposite of what it's giving me at the minute. And yeah, I would say the car I have now is completely not what I want for my driving style and very unsuited for me. It's not a bad thing, it's just that's what it is, and you have to adapt to it. That's why I feel like I've done a reasonable job this year, adapting to something that's not quite what I want or like. That's one of the improvements I've made over the last few years." This is a point that Lando regularly makes, that the car is very hard to drive and you really have to adapt to get what you want out of it. This might be where Daniel's problems lie. If he hasn't been able to adapt his own style to the car, then it would explain what has been happening in races this season. He's known for his aggressive late braking, which has at times in the past allowed him to put together some incredible races and seasons. The MCL36 may not be suited to that style at all, leaving Daniel lacking in ideas on track. Part of why he was brought into the team is that his experience and personality mean he isn't afraid of speaking up in the garage and meetings, and telling the team what he thinks needs to be done to improve the car. Apparently though, Lando has been learning from him. Ricciardo told the media he thought Norris was doing a great job both on track and making his presence felt a bit more off track as well. "The on-track stuff, people can see he's been driving very well," Ricciardo said. "But I think as well that gives you confidence, and then that confidence then shows off track. I think the way he's pushing the team as well, he started to get a good handle on that. He's just showing growth, I guess, showing another kind of level of confidence, but with that bit of maturity as well. Maybe part of why McLaren have decided to let him go is because they don't need the leadership in that garage anymore. If Lando is able to tell the team what needs doing to get the most out of the car, then McLaren are in the enviable position where they don't have to think about getting a driver who can help the team improve. Instead, they can just get somebody who has the raw talent and speed to score points and compete for podiums. And if everything we hear about Oscar Piastri is true, then it sounds like they've got their guy. Do you think Daniel will find a seat for 2023? Or is his time in Formula 1 finally at an end? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.